This is Gary with Gary's Sprinkler Repair Service again. And today I want to show you a quick video on how to repair a lawn sprinkler valve when you don't have all the tools necessary to cut the valve off and replace it with, pipes and glue and all that stuff. And you don't have the time for that. You just want to do a quick, easy homeowner replacement, see if you can get it working. So I'm going to show you an example of that, what kind of valve we're going to be dealing with. Today we're going to use a Rainbird valve. And one cool thing about Rainbird that a lot of people don't know is to do this, we're literally going to swap the top on this side, and we're going to swap the top on the side closest to me here. And so that one literally threads off, and this one we have to take some screws off. But we're going to swap the tops on the brand new valve with the tops on the sprinkler valve that's already down in the ground, and it needs to have it replaced because the valve's leaking. It won't shut off with the timer. So it's just a quick, easy repair for you as a homeowner. So here's a good example of 3 sprinkler valves that are sitting here, and let's assume this guy here on our left is our bad sprinkler valve. And we want to replace the breaker lid here, and when we want to replace the actual valve diaphragm, and we're going to go ahead and replace the entire top on it. So first things first, before you start taking anything apart, one thing you need to do is, I always recommend just turning your timer off. That way there's no electricity going to the solenoid here. And I'm even going to make this so simple that you don't even have to, as long as you use the same valve, you don't have to even do any wiring if you didn't want to. You were just in a big hurry, you wanted to do it quick and easy, you wanted to make sure you didn't mess with any wires or screw anything up. Just a fast, easy way to do it. So first thing we got to do down here is we can see we have a water shutoff that goes to these sprinkler valves. So we want to go ahead and turn that to the off position. So when a ball valve is perpendicular to the pipe here, it is now off. The next thing you want to do is come around. They have a manual bleed screw on the valve. Go ahead and open that up about 1/4 of a turn, and that lets any water or pressure off the valves in the piping down here and in the valve so that you're not fighting water pressure. Once you're done with that, you can go ahead and shut that off again. That's also a good way to make sure that that gate valve works before you start taking screws out and find out that gate valve doesn't work. That maybe it's a broken gate valve, or you have the kind that you have to turn the faucet knob and keep turning to shut one off, and you find out that it's defective and you've already got the top off and now you've got a geyser. So just make sure it's off. You can either turn it on right here with the manual on off to make sure that the valve doesn't start running. If it does, then it means your water's probably not off, or you have a bad shut off. So, but for today, it works. We just proved that the water's off. So quick, easy thing we're gonna do right now is, sometimes these are loose enough. This one is loose, this is the breaker lid. I'm gonna just lightly loosen it up and take the lid off. Now one thing I'm gonna show you real quick, I'm gonna tap this against my leg here, see if I can get the gasket to pop out. Oh, guess I'd be looking over here, it's still stuck on the valve. So here's the gasket. So a lot of times if you're just checking your valve to see if you have a bad valve, like in one of my other videos, you muck the water out of the chamber and you see the water fill back up when you have that gate valve on, so you know you have a bad valve. If so, and you're planning on reusing this, don't lose it. So we can then come over, get our new valve, and we're going to go ahead and take the breaker lid off on that guy. Nice and easy. Make sure that my rubber O-ring goes with me, and literally just set it on there. And just nice and easy, hand tight. You saw I didn't get carried away. We've already replaced half of the valve. So the next step will be for me to take these 6 screws. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 over here. We're going to take those out. But one thing I want to do, just so I'm not fighting it, is to have this electrical solenoid in my way. So I'm going to loosen that up a little bit. Okay, and then once it's nice and loose, I can take the little handle off the top just by snatching it off of there. And then go ahead and just unscrew this solenoid off. And there's nothing that's going to fall out or get in your way. You can literally unscrew it. There it is. Come over here and just set it over there and get it out of your way. Now you can see all you got left to do is take a screwdriver and start going ahead and taking those 6 screws out, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so now I've taken the screwdriver and taken those 6 screws out, and you can see I just gently lift this up off of here, and I've got one that's hanging up just a little bit. You can just loosen it a little bit with your fingers. Looks like it's all the way out. It's this guy. All right, that's problem solved. Top's off. Okay, the next thing you want to do is take your new valve, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take 6 screws out of that, and we're going to take the top off. One thing you can do here on this sprinkler valve, this is supposed to be sitting on there, just fell off. Like you can see, it wasn't a big deal, it didn't fly anywhere. But you're going to go ahead and take your fingers and just kind of pry underneath the edges of this gasket and just start peeling it up. So you can see what I'm doing here, just kind of getting your fingers under the edge and start peeling it up. One thing we want to look for is when we put the new one on, is we want to make sure that this is where the bleed screw goes, towards the front. It has like a double hole. And it has 2 little pins on where it's supposed to go there. So there you go. You can see it's out. And the defective diaphragm is out. You can see this is the inside working part of your valve. Kind of cool to be able to look in there and check it out, see what it looks like. A lot of times I tell people, take a second and look in here. Make sure that there's not a piece of gravel or a piece of glue broke off that's maybe been sitting on this edge right here and preventing this diaphragm on the underside. If you look at the underside, preventing this edge, you can see the kind of the impression it's made here. That's the impression made against this ring right here. So a lot of times you can look and you'll see a nice big dent in that, and then you look down here and lo and behold, there'll be a little piece of bark or a little chunk of glue that broke off from the pipes, and it's preventing this piece from sealing tight against that. Providing you get the piece of glue out of there that was in the way, and you don't have a dent, you can see how this impression is going to the edge here. As long as that impression doesn't go beyond the edge to the, you know, like it stays in the middle, but it's not out here on the edge, you can reuse this diaphragm. If for some reason that goes all the way to the edge, then it's going to suck air through that. Even when it's pushed down sealed, there's a channel for the air to come through, so it wouldn't work. Anyway, let's go ahead and pull the top off our other new valve. Again, I'm going to pull the top, the 6 screws out of this guy, and even I'm going to take the solenoid off just like I did that guy, so that I can just go ahead and put the diaphragm back on, put the 6 screws back in, and then go ahead and use my existing solenoid and screw it right into the top of this guy. And I don't even have to do any wiring. So quick, easy homeowner repair of a Rainbird sprinkler valve. Okay, I've got the top off of my new valve. It's sitting here ready to go. And I've got my new diaphragm, brand new. You can see here's where the solenoid goes. See the little 2 pins right here? These 2 gray pins, that's where these 2 little holes are gonna go. So we just go ahead and take that for a second and go ahead and set that down on there. And again, I'm gonna show you where it lines up, where those pins are. So you want to make sure that you set it on there to where those pins line up, and then just try to line up your screw holes as best you can. And then we're going to take the top. Again, the solenoid part of it is the round part where the electrical solenoid goes, faces towards those 2 little holes. So we're going to go ahead and put that on next and just lightly set that down on there. And then we're going to go ahead and push it down. And now we're ready to go ahead and hold it with one hand and tighten the screws. One tip I didn't tell you is when you're trying to take these 6 screws out, you saw when I took the valve apart, I took the solenoid off first, then took the 6 screws out. When you do the new valve and you're taking the top off your brand new valve to put on here, just get your solenoid off and take it out of the way, and just set it over here off to the side where it's not in your way, so you can get these screws out without any kind of a challenge. All right, so we're pretty close to being done here. Now, if your parents never taught you how to change a tire on a car, you know how you loosen the lug nuts? You go from here to here, from there to there, and there to there. You crisscross when you're tightening. Do the same thing when you're tightening screws on here. Somebody asked me the other day, well, can I use a screw gun or a drill to take these screws out? You can, but you just need to be really careful you don't strip them or over tighten them. This is just all plastic stuff here. So again, I tighten this guy first, go over to this side, tighten that guy next, and just don't get carried away, even if you're hecka strong. Just take your time, just lightly snug them down, okay? You can always tighten them later if they leak a little bit. Again, you can see we're just going kind of crisscross and tighten pattern here. And I already got that guy, so I'm gonna come back over and get this one. So we're almost done here. So without me having to do a lot of explaining, next time when you're doing it yourself, we're going to go crisscross, and then we're going to go back over here. We're just double checking to make sure everybody's snug right now. Tightening this guy again. We're just double checking everybody just to make sure everybody's nice and snug now that we got them all down. Okay, now that we're done with that part, we can take our existing solenoid. I always recommend taking a little bit of spit, put it on your finger, and there's an O-ring right here. You can see an O-ring right here. We're going to get that wet. So give me just a sec. I'll do that real quick. And then we're going to go ahead and thread it back in there. So I just set it down in there, and then go ahead and start threading it back on. And again, don't get carried away. Just lightly tighten that thing down to where it's snug. Make sure the bleed screw's nice and snug. Again, double check your breaker lid, make sure that's snug. You've now successfully, and if you even want to, you can put this guy back on. It has a little notch here on the back for the wires. And that's back on as well. So all we got left to do is nice and easy. We're going to turn this on ever so slowly. That's always a good idea to go slow. You can hear them pressuring up. And this is the valve starting to come on. It's normal for it to leak when you first turn it on, because it has to hit at least 15 psi in order to be able to shut off. So again, we're going to loosen it a little bit and make sure it's nice and tight. So if your sprinklers are on, I didn't have it quite tight enough, so behind me my lawn sprinkler started to come on. So again, I just kind of loosened it up a little bit like this, and then lightly snugged it down. And then you can hear it goes off. And then we're all done. So that's how you replace the top on a Rainbird sprinkler valve. One cool thing I'm going to point out to you that a lot of people don't know is on a Rainbird valve, both halves on here, the only time it matters whether you're buying a 1-inch or a 3/4 inch valve, and you can see the size of it right here on the lid. This says one, it's upside down, it says 100. That stands for a 1-inch valve. Now that breaker lid's off a 1-inch valve. But if you look down here, it's on a 3/4 inch pipe. So the cool thing about it, what I'm trying to explain to you is you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, Ace Hardware, wherever you need to go to get a Rainbird valve, it doesn't matter if you're just going to swap the tops on the valve, it does not matter what size valve you buy. So you might as well buy the more inexpensive 3/4 inch rather than buying a 1-inch. Today, just for purposes of the demonstration, I wanted to show you that even though you have a 3/4 inch body, the tops off of a 1-inch valve, so you can see 1-inch valve, see how big the holes are, a lot bigger than a 3/4. I don't need any of that. I'm not gluing anything. If I was going to replace the valve and glue everything on and use new male adapters, these little guys down here, then yeah, it matters what size valve you buy.